let's fire up the internets here. Get everyone on here.
Do you think I should tweet the YouTube or the Twitch?
I always do the Twitch just because I think it's I did the one to the Slack, so that one's done.
Okay,
I
okay.
think it's a little bit easier myself.
Twitch is the high post in business.
Well, I feel like that's where people are in the chat mostly, and then the YouTube. It's like
Yeah,
sure, like
yeah,
the
that's true.
YouTube's
That's
always
true.
out there. I mean, it's forever. You can go watch it as long as you want. Maybe that's good, maybe that's bad, but
YouTube is forever.
YouTube is forever, my friend. YouTube.
Ugh, there we go. I had to pause that. Yeah, we did our .NET Beyond conference. It's actually a very good format. We could talk about it at some point, but we broadcast it to YouTube and Twitch, and yeah, it was nice. The difference is Twitch has ads. I guess YouTube does too. I pay for the premium thing, so I don't see them. Well, there you go. Never mind.
Yes, I think we pay for the premium as well. I think if you have children and you let them watch YouTube, that's like the first thing you have to do. Like, well, we committed to paying to YouTube premium. At least that's how that was my decision in our house.
Yep.
Far and away, I think YouTube in my house for my son. That's by far and away his favorite channel, his favorite service. It's like not even. There's really not even a close second. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I sort of like. There's like a love hate with YouTube. There's some good stuff. There's actually some nice educational stuff on that, and then there's some stuff I just hate. So I don't know. I don't know where I have mixed feelings.
Yeah. You have to spend a lot of mental effort to not get sucker punched by the internet.
This is true. This is true.
All right,
All right.
let
Well,
me
we
see
do
if I
have
can get the
we have
flag.
3 ads today, Cote. So
Oh, very nice.
give us 3 ad breaks,
Security
please.
experts. Okay, I mean, okay. I have not prepared, Brandon.
You've not prepared. They're saying you're a little low in the Slack. You actually sound pretty good to me, but
Yeah,
maybe.
let me turn that up, and how about I'll come right in here.
Oh, Ryan, that's
Is
probably too
that
much. I don't know. Ryan's probably too much for him now. How's that,
okay?
Ryan?
Is this
I think
is this
that's
better if
Ryan.
I stay back here?
I don't know. I'm waiting
You
for
know,
Ryan to tell me.
I
Much
went
better.
I
Much
went so,
better.
I went so long where I'm low on the screen. Jesus.
Well, come on. That's forget it. That's asking too much.
Hey,
Like,
I got to
proper
try.
camera placement's gonna be.
Now, as a streamer's delight, I'm wearing black, and my daughter has a bit of a cold, so this right here is snot. Not my own snot, too.
Man, I tell you, like the fact that we don't make you pay for this behind the scenes look is absolutely a travesty.
My boss and I were on a call with someone earlier this week, and we had the I remember when I didn't have kids, and I thought this was annoying. So we had the annoying parent to parent thing where we were talking about, like, I don't know, nose Fritas and like poop, and it's just like, especially once you've had 5 kids like Matt Ray, you're just like, yeah, I don't know,
Whatever.
to be covered in a small person's like bodily fluids, I don't even notice it
Doesn't matter.
anymore.
Doesn't phase
Yeah.
me. Yeah. We're so much about like your perception of the human body going from like your birth through a childhood into becoming a parent into it just everything becomes different. It's like I wouldn't say different. You perceive it in a different way.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just looking at so we can talk about messaging and EU regulations. That's good.
Yeah, I don't know. I
Love
think
it.
the EU. I don't know. I have mixed feelings about the EU stuff, so I don't know. That could
No,
be
I think that's
talk.
always it's a
Plus,
good.
you're in Europe, so it's just like why not? You're an expert. You're in Amsterdam. Talk about
There,
it.
there you go. Okta, yeah, security breach. Uh-huh.
Oops.
Oh
We could
yeah,
talk about this gaming thing. Like I feel like it's kind of interesting. More strategy discussion. Like everybody
we
wants
we
to play
could
games.
we could revisit the Docker is now a double unicorn again.
Yeah, yeah, we can talk about that one. I think that was
See what's
interesting.
up with that. Did
Mhm.
they still have the is his name Scott, the guy who was the VP of marketing at Puppet, as their CEO?
That I don't know. I don't know. Well, I guess I should. The Docker CEO. Let's see. I don't know.
I'm pretty sure it's what's the
Ben
guy's name?
Oleb? No, is that right?
No, he's the old
No, he's the other
CEO.
one. Sorry. Internet. Just faked me out. Hold on. About us.
It is.
Isn't it your old
Yes,
comrade?
Scott Johnston. He
Is he?
used to be.
Okay.
He was the VP of marketing at Puppet, and then he was the VP of marketing at or maybe he was the VP of marketing at Docker. Yeah, VP marketing and product Puppet.
All right. We're gonna talk about him then. We're talking about Docker.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. I
Okay,
feel like
let's.
we should get I think Matt, I'm gonna roll this over to next week. I want to talk about this Dagger, Solomon Hike's new company, and this
Oh,
Q
okay.
stuff. But I feel like this is
Yeah,
like there'll be a good Matt Ray topic.
yeah. Okay, good, good. All right. Let's see if I remember that lineup, but that's fine.
All right, just remember
Three ads.
three ads any way you want to do it.
Drata. Oh, okay.
No, Drata, Drata,
Drata.
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 That's good. Good practice. I may get
What
you
is
to
that?
do.
What is that? Greek or something?
I don't know. I don't know what it is. Um, but like I don't know. I don't see. Anyway, I did the ad read and I'm kind of getting the sponsor approval, right? And they're like, oh, it's because I said Drata. I thought it said Drata. They're like, it's more like a W. They even gave me the phonetic, and I was like, I don't know, it wasn't enough. That's like a bad sign. Like when someone gives you the phonetic and you're like, that's not enough. Like I don't know. So yeah, I actually like sent him a clip of me saying it in a couple different ways. And he was like that. He's like that one. So
Oh, this
I don't know
reminds
what
one.
that says about me.
One last thing for the streamer's delight. I have this article on the CNCF annual survey that is going to be in is it InfoQ? Whatever, one of those. And I made a chart that showed developers using Kubernetes versus not, a pie graph. And it was like, I don't know, let's just say 68% using Kubernetes. So I put using Kubernetes. And then that would be 32% who are not using Kubernetes. So I called that Notternetes. And the copy editor was like, I'm not familiar with this term, Notternetes. And then the editor, kind of like the whatever you call him, the editor in charge of it, like it was. I should have taken a screenshot, but they kind of explained what the joke was, and they were like, but I get it, and so
So did it stay in?
I think so. I think so.
Nice.
There were a couple of like Coté style like asides and jokes that we cut.
I want you to write an article for Slate and submit it, and I want to see what happens. I want you to go through that editing process. I like to see if.
Oh man,
I've or maybe I just want David Plotz to edit you one time.
That would be fun
because I'd be like, how's this gonna go?
Yeah, I've been through the fire of the tech world editing and copy editing, but I think in the real world, I would just be like, I just like table flip and be like, fuck this shit, I'm going back to the internet.
I don't know. I feel like I have such mixed feelings. Like I feel like a couple times I've been edited by like a real editor, and I was like, this is fucking good.
Oh, for sure.
These people have some good ideas, but then other times it's kind of like more proofreading, and then they're kind of editing. I'm like, I don't like this. Like, I don't like a lot of issues with this.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't remember the guy's name, but the dude who has edited like at least 2, if not all, of the little O'Reilly books that I've done is fantastic. He's a great copy editor. He goes through and exactly, you're like, wow, that's amazing. So
it's better.
Anyhow, all right.
Whenever you're ready.
Well, now I'm not an expert on, let's say, Laotian, Cambodian, Myanmaran. Is that how one would say it? Indonesian, or I embarrassingly can't remember the other country in that kind of zone of like not India or China or Japan. What am I trying to think of? Not Myanmar. You got Malaysia or Malaysian
Okay,
food.
Malaysia,
Now listen. I know it is probably as insulting to group those countries together as it is to say that like Tennessee, Kentucky, and Texas are basically the same thing. I get it, right? I can't really distinguish between all of them. However, here is what I want your take on, Brandon. Is now we can both. I think hopefully we can all agree as humanity that both Thai and Vietnamese food are delicious, right? They are
like that.
Maybe right after Tex-Mex, they are one of the more perfect foods that you can have. We had some Thai food tonight. It was great stuff. Now, they're both good. But what I want to walk through is the strategy, the heuristic, the kind of thinking that you go through when you choose either one of them, right? Like, you can't choose both at once, but you're going to have a meal. And when do you choose the Vietnamese food versus the Thai food?
Well, that is a good question. I guess the shortcut would be if I kind of want the noodles, which I know was the bun, right? Isn't that?
Uh-huh.
I would go Vietnamese. But then if I was feeling like, you know what I want? Spicy. I want something kind of spicy. Then I would order the other. But
This is interesting.
That's not really, because The reason it's like that is like I don't know the menus and the entrees that well. Like I only kind of know a few things in each one, but I just kind of think to myself, oh yeah, Thai's like a little bit more spicy, and maybe it's like a pad Thai. I'd be thinking about that,
Sure,
like it's
sure.
sort of like yeah, maybe I kind of in my head I think back to like some kind of spicy pad Thai kind of thing. If I was in the mood for that, I would go Thai. But then if I want, the Vietnamese, like I want the pork egg rolls and
Oh,
the noodles, and then with I usually get the I guess I just said pork, but the pork meat with the egg rolls. That's the way I
yes.
like it. So that would be the two decision points now. But admittedly, the people that are listening to the show that are really familiar with the foods are going to say like I'm leaving out like the best dishes on each side. Like I don't really know what they are, which is true. So
Well,
that would be a heuristic I would use.
now that's the way I wanted to contextualize this thing is like we're all saying there are the best dishes on each side, right? It's just sometimes you want one the best dish versus another the best dish.
Yeah,
And it's a
definitely.
matter of like figuring out how like if I were to ask you, Brandon, we can all agree that like bourbon is delicious, more or less, right? And we can all agree that a ice cold Dos Equis with maybe 3 slices of lime in it is also delicious. But
Definitely.
there are different states of existence that you would prefer one over the other, right?
Oh, for sure. Definitely. In
Painting
that
the
case.
outside of your house in Texas in August, you
Yeah.
don't really
Yeah.
want a bourbon, right? Like you probably want the Dos Equis,
Yeah.
right, is what you're
Of
going to
course.
choose.
Oh, yeah. Definitely. Well, yeah. I
And
mean, certainly 100%. Please continue.
and so it's a similar sort of thing. It's like, you got your Mossman curry over here, delicious dish. You got your random Thai green curry, also delicious dish. You got your pho or your pho or whatever you want to call it over here. Maybe you got some fried rice situation in Vietnamese land that's delicious. You could have your spring rolls, either fresh or fried. Those are good. Or as you cited, this is just I don't know if this is the technical term, but you have basically a pho with no broth, which is always on the menu as a bun. And yes, I used to eat the charbroiled pork with egg rolls. I think that powered me through a full decade of my life at some point.
I love that
just,
stuff.
Just,
Love
just
that.
eating that. But it's just like it's good to sort of like because the situation is going to come up. You're going to have to choose between the two of them. You're not going to have a lot of time. You're worried about like drying bodily fluids from your 2-year-old on your body if you got to deal with that, and you need a heuristic. You need an algorithm to select through what they are. And I'm gonna suggest the following because I put about 2 minutes of thought into this when Kim, my wife, and I were discussing this. I think now obviously this is an oversimplification, but I think that Thai food tends to favor coconut milk a lot more than Vietnamese food. I feel like there is some Vietnamese food that I've encountered that has a coconutty thing, but a Thai food, chances are pretty high if you just throw a dart at a Thai food menu, you're going to get some coconut stuff, right? It's a little thicker, more brothier, right? So I feel like, well, going back to our analogy, I feel like Thai food is like bourbon, and your Vietnamese food is more like the ice cold Dos Equis, right? Sometimes you want that like crisp, sort of like clear is the wrong word, but you want that sort of crisp, fresh tasting thing of Vietnamese food. And sometimes you're just like, just keep the bottle over here, bartender. We're just gonna eat this food. And that's, I think so far, and maybe the listeners have an idea of how to heuristically go through these things. But I feel like if I was trying to train the machine learning thing, that's the advice that I would give it.
Now, Cote, I will give you one heuristic that overrides all of these. Everything we've just talked about here is ultimately you're going to go with what is the food that my children may actually eat.
Ah,
All right, that's good. I think it's a good stopping point. Do your kids eat? Do you have to make them something else, or will they eat any of the food you just talked about?
well, my son will eat pad thai.
Yeah.
He'll eat noodles, and
Well,
sometimes
obviously the youngest, your youngest is not. I
oh
mean,
yeah,
they're still
she'll eat white rice. That's
yeah,
and,
yeah,
and
yeah.
we'll
Oh,
put
which
some of
is
the rice
such
in
a
the
great,
coconut.
like the white rice phase of that's all they'll eat. It's like it's so great. It's like super cheap. You kind of get it anywhere, and it's just
Yeah, yeah.
like we used to take my son to sushi when he was really little, and that's all he would eat, and it was great. But now, of course, he likes sushi. I'm like, wow, this is a lot more expensive, and you're eating it way too fast. So, so then it's like, then I tell him, well, now I like get the edamame, and I even ask him, like, don't you want some white rice? He's like, no, not at all. I'm like, come on, man, come on. Cote, we got a new sponsor this week. We were just talking. It's Strata. So, hey, you know what everyone needs to do? Put your security and compliance on autopilot. go see your friends at Drada, if I'm hopefully I'm saying that correctly, and sign up and use their product.
I feel like this is the show that if you have a SaaS based security compliance sort of related product, this is going to be your best bet for your SaaS. Is it your CAC and your ACV, maybe some
That's right.
ARR?
That's right, baby. You need all of that. You need everything. So
you're growth hacking one MP3 at a time. That's put that in the sponsor prospectus.
That's right. That's right, man. I think it's interesting listening to all the other tech podcasts, or the cloud tech podcasts. It's good. Like, I think there are definitely sponsors that like have cracked the code that I think figure out how to get use the podcast, and then there's many people that it's just foreign to them. That's a whole nother show we could do about I don't know, but I always feel like we should maybe we'll get Gracely to do it. I don't know which feed. We should do like a meta episode of here's what I've learned about sponsorships, I guess, quote unquote, selling sponsorships in the last 2 years. I'd like to get Gracely because it has been quite the education.
Yeah, that would be fun.
No one will listen to that, but anyway,
we could do that as a Sunday perspective.
Yeah, maybe that's a Sunday perspective show. We'll get on Brian. Hey, Brian, come on your show.
Yeah. I'm just waiting for Google Cloud or Azure or AWS to finally sponsor him. I feel like just a few more likes and subscribes, he's going to be up there. Yeah.
All right, we'll see.
And the copy will be easy. It'll be like, Big 3 public cloud company. You've heard of us. You should just keep using us.
Keep doing it. Keep buying.
That's right. All right.
Whenever you're ready.
Well, it looks like my friends in the European Union, which I have to say I appreciate the European Union all the time. I like what they're doing. I like the cut of their jib. It looks like they're getting into some area of maybe regulating, doing a little bit of project management about what we call messaging. Now, this isn't messaging like your RabbitMQs and your Tibcos and your NATs and things like this. This is what we used to call, I think, instant messaging, chat, direct messaging. And I as usual, I haven't read in detail this stuff. That's what you're here for, Brandon. But
right,
I do remember that there was this notion. I think maybe it comes into effect in 2024. I feel like there was an actual date that in the European Union, the EU, as we like to say now, if you haven't spent a lot of time in European airports like I have, you won't realize that the EU actually also means EU plus Switzerland and Sweden or something. I mean, Sweden's in the EU, but there's always what you can do.
There's one more. Sweden isn't an official member, but a member.
I think Sweden's in there. Sweden isn't part of the.
Oh, I meant Switzerland. Switzerland, but they're always neutral, but not neutral, but they still want to be in certain clubs. Is that what it is?
There's a little sidebar here. When it comes to the EU, there are three, at least from my ignorant perspective, things. What would you call it? 3 types of EU that you can be in, right? And there's the EU, the country uses the euro. I think this is economic or something, right? So, right. For example, Sweden still uses the kroner, so they don't use the euro, as I recall.
Okay. That's a bummer.
And then 2, you have what they call, I'm going to mispronounce this, the Schengen Agreement, which basically means that you can go between countries and not have to go through passport control. Is pretty much it. It means that traveling amongst all the Schengen, or however you say it, countries, is kind of like traveling amongst the states in the United States. You just do it, right? And then the third one is all the regulations and things that come, right? That you have to this sort of cheese can only come from Italy, and
right? The administrative side,
right? Mm-hmm. Now the other dimension, and you see this when in airports, when you go to the border control things, there's almost there must be a name for this, but there's kind of the friends of the EU, right? and I think Switzerland is always a friend of the EU. They're kind of I don't know about this EU thing, and all the EU people are that's cool, you can come along. Right? It's no problem. So Switzerland is always up there as an exception. And I think there might be some other major countries.
Hey, let's get to the important things before we get on to the thing we want to talk about here. Is there global entry for the EU? Do you have it? Can you get something like that?
No. There is, unfortunately, there is something here in the Netherlands called Privum. And however, you have to be an actual citizen of an
Not,
EU
all
country
right,
to
I'm
apply
out.
for it. Residence card holders, which is to say me, cannot apply to it, which is,
Okay. Well,
I don't know.
hey, add that onto the requirements for something else. Like, hey, I want to, although I'm not traveling Europe, I shouldn't say it. I don't actually don't need it that much, but it's always good to know.
Now I don't know if you had the United Kingdom has a fantastic global entry like program. I think
Oh,
they
yeah.
call it like it's not called Friends of the UK, but it's something like
Is it
UK
open to
frequent
non
travelers.
citizens? Of,
I it's at least open to Americans,
all right.
and because you apply for it, and you know I think it doesn't really matter so much now because everyone can do this. But there were several years there where you had to be a UK citizen or be in this Friends of the UK program, and you could go through the automated passport things where
Oh,
you kind of
that's
just
so
put your
nice.
passport in. And but recently when I went up there recently, I think you don't have to be enrolled in the program. You just have to be like UK, American, or EU, and then you can go through to that thing. I
All
don't
right.
know.
Well, we're going to figure that out. After we finish talking about, so that what you're referring to here was the Digital Markets Act. That is the big thing, or the DMA, which reminds me of, I don't know, lots of other things other than that. But the DMA Act is being passed. And so I guess the hoopla about this from the security people is as it's written, it's going to be, I guess they call it the quote unquote gatekeepers, which are like the really big companies, are going to be forced to interoperate with smaller companies. So what this means for like a WhatsApp is that they will have to basically, if you will, integrate with like SMS or a smaller competitor that has a messaging service, which on the face of it, right? Like all these things with the EU, like I have such mixed feelings about the EU. It's like, as I've just laid out there, you're like, that makes sense. That would be great if things would interoperate. That's generally a good idea.
Yes.
But the little problem here is that if you want to do encryption, right, is that, well, depending on what services you have to integrate with may determine what kinds of encryption you can do. So,
Right.
then we kind of get to the common argument, the least common denominator argument that gets made all the time. Well, then suddenly if I have to integrate with everything, then I have to like either weaken the encryption or potentially even remove it. So I don't know. I don't know where I come down on this whole thing. It's like, well, on one hand, it is nice. It would be nice to see things more interoperate. On the other hand, it isn't so bad to like just switch messaging services. Like you kind of pick the one that you like. I mean, I know we kind of talked about this before, but it kind of does feel like in the United States, don't come at me, Android people, but like I feel like Apple Messages is where you want to be. Feels like
Yeah.
in Europe, it's WhatsApp. I
Uh-huh.
know in China, I forget the one that they're using. They have their own. So it's like it feels very regional, right? Or you just kind of have to live with it. So I can't say this is a huge pain point in my life that I really think. I guess I would, if you ask me, I'd be like, I'd rather have stronger encryption and switch between the different apps. And even you got like Signal and other things in there as well. Like I'm okay with that rather than give up security so that I could just have like one old school, like what was the thing we used to use, like iChat. Like used to be one that you would aggregate all
Well,
of your instant messaging
oh
tools,
yeah, we would use
Jabber or something.
well, Jabber was a protocol, and on the Mac you'd use this thing called ADIUM.
Yeah, ADM, right? It's like, yeah,
ADIUM.
but that was
Yeah.
never that good. And at the end, I was like, I don't really like that much. So
Yeah, yeah.
I'd prefer, I think I would prefer switching services, keeping encryption versus the ADM approach.
Now, I know you said you don't like this, but you opened up a whole other thing here, which is interoperability is cool, but a layer less difficult than that is to say make your services open enough that a third party person could come in and be an ADM for it, right? Like, and for example, right, like somewhat infamously, Twitter used to have a completely open API. And you could do whatever you wanted. You could totally re-implement every single feature of Twitter in your own client. And at some point, they were probably like, I don't know, ACV or something. And then they basically what's the word the world prefers to use now? They basically limited the functionality of that API, which kind of made some clients not work effectively. And maybe that would be fun regulation to be like, you can't limit the API that you have so that anyone can build on top of stuff.
Mm-hmm. So,
I
but
don't
maybe
know.
where you're coming at here is like, and maybe this is the distinction here between a regulation approach versus
Yeah.
let's call it like a technological approach, right? One would be the regulation is like, hey, you have to all work together. But it's sort of like, as any type of regulation in law, it's like completely up to interpretation. And this is why, Matt Levine like writes 3,000 words a day about financial stuff. It's like nobody really knows, right? You have to interpret it. But another approach to this would be, we're coming out with a new protocol, right? Here's the protocol that everyone needs to use. It's going to have all the requirements in here for security, and the ability to like do the instant reactions, right? Like in iMessage, so that it shows up in WhatsApp, and it's not like some weird looking thing. So someone sort of sits down and defines a protocol, and then you just say the rule would be everybody has to support this protocol, right? So that would be a way to go. Now the problem there, the thing that people say is, well, that sometimes kills innovation, right? If you say you can only use this protocol and you can't vary from it, then and you can't add on to it. People say, well, what if somebody wants to invent some new idea, right?
Oh yeah.
So I don't know. I kind of feel like this is why I think I have the mixed feelings about the EU. It's like, I don't know. I mean, I think there are good intentions somewhere inside of that, right? But then at the end, all we end up with cookie pop-ups, and it's like there's nothing but anger. I have nothing but anger about that. So it's where do we go? How do we?
That is a major misstep. All right, I had three things, but I only remember two of them. First of all, I think this idea of that would be fascinating if there was actually a good, and I think I talked about this with respect to USB cables at some point. If there was a good evolving sort of protocol or specification, and the law was you have to use this protocol. I don't know. I'd love to experiment with that. I mean, I feel like there's ISO standards and things like that you have to follow. And, as a kind of wacky but maybe instructional thing, right? Like in many countries, English is the official language that all law and business is transacted in, right? Especially in the States,
right?
I think it's the only language. Now, if you think about English, especially, there's no like, I understand that with France French, so to speak, there is some sort of academy of French that rules about what the French language is, but there is no such academy in English. Oof. So if the protocol of transacting your society, your government is English, you're saying that you have a very chaotic, decentralized way of evolving the core of how your society exists, which is the English language, right? So we already know a system that we can adapt. If we say this protocol must be followed, if the protocol is just like chaos, right? Like it's pretty sloppy, but it's definitely possible. Now, third, I am, as you may recall, I believe that capitalism has gone wild with screwdriver types and screw types, right? Like we don't need like 5-6 different types of putting a screw in a wall. Hex, you got the Phillips head, the flat head. You've got that incomprehensible Phillips head that has these little other blades on it. I don't understand what that's about, right? Like, and I feel like maybe similarly, just like with too many screwdrivers, maybe messaging standards have gone this far too, right? Like, really, we don't need this many ways of doing it. Like, maybe it's cool if you want to have like little reaction things, but like, sure, we can't imagine what the future has in store for us, but like, who cares, right? Like, I think we can all kind of agree on the core of messaging and come up with, if not a standard, with a set of rules about it, how it must be done. And sure, encryption is kind of a problem. But, you can always, I don't know. It feels like whenever I hear like something is a technological problem, I'm like, exactly. Have the nerds go solve it, right? Like we, at one point, we put several people on the moon. I'm pretty sure we can figure out end-to-end encryption across different messaging platforms.
Perfect. I think. Well said, Coté. Power to the people. Power to the nerds. So. Who's our next sponsor is another podcast. Hey, so everybody, when you finish listening to this podcast, go download the Traceroute podcast and hear a whole bunch of cool stories from them. I think it's 7 episodes total. So check out our friends at Traceroute. You don't have to tell them your friends from Software Defined Talk sent you. Just download it. That's all I care. Download it, listen, comment, share it on social. I don't know. So living in the EU, I guess it's like funny to say, it's like Let me ask this as like an American question. Like, you know how like Americans, well, I don't know if I'll say it. Like, there's skepticism built into the American political system. I think I can say that. I don't think that's controversial. Like,
Absolutely.
and obviously the EU, they had the whole breakup there with Brexit. But like, does it like come up in daily thought? Or people like, oh man, the EU, and they put up another sign, or is it like, no, people are like pretty happy with it? Like, oh, the euro, it's great, we love it.
I have to caveat that I don't interact with people very much in general. But my sense, at least here in the Netherlands, is it's more the second, right? Like I think that the EU as it is now, people are pretty satisfied. Now, like all comfortable groups of people, whenever there's change, which is to say adding a new member, that becomes like kind of a big deal.
So that's always
right?
going to be
like,
a big deal.
Like
right?
that.
Like,
That's yeah. I mean, that's always a burdensome thing. But like, I don't know. I mean, I think that
but people aren't like on the street like
No,
why is the EU making us click pop-ups?
I don't.
The
I don't
EU
think
is
so.
like, you don't see like protest. That's what I would protest. I'd be like, you know what, these pop-ups not working. Let's just get rid of them.
No. I mean, I have to be careful.
That's
in
my
how
only political statement about the EU. It's
Yeah,
like, we gotta get rid of these pop-ups.
Over the past few years, I've developed this theory about the. Let me narrow it about the continental European mindset, and I want to phrase it very carefully, and that is that I do not think that most Europeans have kind of like the cowboy spirit that Americans have. And what I mean by the cowboy entrepreneurial spirit is that whether it's true or not, right? It's core to like American thinking that like at any point, any minute in my life, I can basically say, fuck that shit and go west. Right? Like, because there's always opportunity, there's land, I can completely redo things, right? Like it's limitless potential out there. So if I don't like what's going on, I'm out. And there's a positive version of that, which is to say, and this is the part that I don't have worded correctly, is that like, I have hope that there is something different and new in the future. Whereas I feel like just structurally, Europe is like fully cooked. Like there's no more space, right? There have been thousands of years.
It's spoken for.
Yeah, thousands and thousands of years of like fully developing out and building Europe. Now there are like, wilderness and things like that, but like it's not like Texas where like you can drive for 20 minutes and you look around and you're like, oh my God, I could die out here.
We're in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, there's no cell coverage. Yeah.
And so once you reach that that sort of optimal, would you call it equilibrium? Like, I think at that point, you're like, yeah, fuck yeah, I want some regulation because I don't want to like fuck this up, right? Like, we have figured our shit out, and now let's lock it down, right? Like, let's not take any risks or anything. And so like, and I think that's a hard thing. It's taken me a while, but that's a hard thing for like an American to understand. Is that like. And I'm gonna be kind of like put Americans in a weird light here. Is that like government actually can be pretty awesome, right? Like it can actually make your life better if you just sort of like collectively decide that like you're gonna give it a lot of money and put up with it.
All right. Well, listen. If someone gets rid of the pop-ups, I'm willing to like be open to that mindset.
Right.
That's the first thing. I gotta get rid of those. And it'd be great. Like if there's just like I agree. Like you probably can't have. Like I probably can't have my own global entry program in Europe, but like if there's just a way like you can make the line shorter on passport control, love that too.
I think
just throwing out some easy wins for the EU. Just throwing that out there.
I also hate the pop-ups, but I think that's also an example of like the the EU trying to ask the genie known as the tech industry for a wish, and the genie's like, check out how I fuck you up the ass on this one. Right? Like, I mean, there's perfectly fine ways you could do that.
Yeah, it's true. Maybe it is. Maybe it's just sort of it's not, it's the implementation. All right, let's continue on. All right, so we got 2 ads. So we got one more ad break. What are we talking about next?
Do you have something to say about the gaming thing here?
Yeah, we could do some. I got something to say about gaming. We can.
All right, we'll try for gaming and then maybe Docker and
maybe a little Docker, then a little ad break, and then we'll hold on.
All right.
Oh, thanks to the hey, I should have said I didn't get to it, but thanks for the correction from the chat on the WeChat. WeChat was the one I missed when I was
That's
trying
right.
to say.
And I think if I remember my Ben Thompson canon, in Taiwan in Japan they use
Line?
line or
Yeah.
something.
That's all right though. We're not. Are you still reading him? Anyway, that's another topic. We'll talk
No, I
about
don't
that
read
later.
them, but I listen to the podcast. I just I mean, he did an
Dithering?
interview.
Did you listen to the Dithering
Oh
podcast?
yeah, that's a good
I don't know.
podcast.
Do I need
That's
to
good.
go all in on that? Is
No,
it good?
no,
Is it worth it?
no. I mean, if you're questioning it, no. I mean,
Okay.
it's just
All right.
it's fine.
Even better. All right. Let's go.
All right. Well, it looks like, I think that the past 2 years, and maybe this is just like, our generation and generations under us have kind of come of age, and they really have made video gaming, as we used to call it. I think it's just called gaming now. I'm even kind of showing my cards here, so to speak. Hey, that's kind of a fun pun. But like, I think maybe playing video games is like all segments of the population, except maybe our parents. Like it's a core thing that people do, just like TV or I don't know, ironing, things like that. And so therefore, I think that's why we see all of these acquisitions and like attempts to get into gaming, right? I think Google shut down its Stadia thing recently. They kind of folded there. And it looks like Amazon also got into some gaming stuff, kind of infamously for those of us who just decide to, like, we just go to Apple and we're like, I don't know, here's all my money. Can you give me everything? Like, you get this ridiculous arcade thing, which, as far as I can tell, doesn't really get you much. Like,
Yeah. Nothing really in the arcade. Yeah.
I feel like, just small note here, right? Like, I mean, come on, Apple. I'm like you have more money than Google. Just like buy EA or something and make that part of.
Well, I think what I think is
just
funny
try
is
harder.
I think there's that, and it's also like here it is, like 'cause Apple Arcade has a lot of casual games, which I kind of like, right? I mean, I like the category. I don't really play lots of games, but then out of nowhere, somebody just writes Wordle, which is just like a super simple word game. I guess it's just all written, implemented in the browser, and it's like the most massive hit. So like if you're in charge of Apple Arcade, I don't know. I just think you would just be like forever frustrated. You're like, I don't get it. Like, why? Because like if that had come out in like Apple Arcade, a Wordle person, which is this, I'm sure it would be a very easy thing to build. Like, I'm sure it would be a huge hit. But here they have all of these games, they have all these graphics and all this other stuff, and like no one's playing them. So it must be extremely frustrating.
Maybe I'm going to throw this out there. Well, this is not quite accurate. I feel like maybe the Apple way is that unless you are an SVP, Apple does not acknowledge that you exist, right? So Apple will use its SVPs as sort of like thought leaders and spokespeople. And to be fair, there are people below that level I don't watch the keynotes like you do, that kind of show up. But it's not like a personality driven company, right? Or I should say the personalities that drive it are a very small set of people. Whereas I feel like maybe in gaming, there is a huge variety of, like, whether it's actual people or styles of like personalities. There's a lot of brands that come and go in gaming. And Apple is not really that great at like, all of a sudden there's this hot thing, right? Like Apple is very focused on like maybe 5 or 6 people whose name that kind of like represent Apple, and then like 5 or 6 products that exist, right? And that's it. Like versus like, from my total outsider view, like if you look at gaming, like every 6 months, there's just like something weird and new happening.
And I think so, but I think this gets at the point of like what I think is kind of interesting to talk about is that, so one, everyone is trying to get into gaming because the charts always show that like the amount of money spent on games is a lot more than on movies and other forms of entertainment. So there's an incredible amount of money that's being spent on it. And then I think to your point about the SVP perspective of this is always the same. They kind of like take a look around, and I don't mean they actually necessarily play a lot of the games, but they kind of get a sense of like, wow, like there's all these consoles, then there's Steam, and there's the PC gamers, and then there's iPhone games and some mobile games. And I think they all kind of come to the same MBA logical strategy. It's like, what we need to do? It's like, there's just too much. It's just really confusing. Like we need to just bundle all of this together in one group, and we'll just pay, $15.99 a month. And we're going to that'll drive our services revenue. And clearly people are going to want this because that's clearly the problem. And it's like, I think the issue is they never actually push into like all the subgenres, to your point, around
yes,
like what is really going on. Because I would like you, kind of a certain age. Like I think we kind of came up through like console gaming. I'm probably more a casual gamer. Like maybe your entry point was Doom. Maybe it was something along those lines. And I think that's like one perspective. But then as I watch kind of like, the youth of today, to be the old man, is just like, they have Steam and then they have come up through Roadblocks and Epic
Uh-huh.
and like Steam to an outsider. And I still feel this way when I'm helping my son with it. I am like, this was designed just to be infuriating. Like Steam, it's got like graphics everywhere. It's complicated. It's confusing. It has lots of configurations. And the games just are like so wide ranging from like free trash to like very compelling story games. And it's like, and I think what I finally understand as I kind of really watch through my son and his friends play is like, that's what they want, right? It's like a free for all, right? And that is like they love the free for all because the number one gaming thing that they use, I think, is not Twitch, it's YouTube. They watch these videos of people playing these games and they watch people coming up with new ways to play the games that they're familiar with. And the YouTube videos are very scattered and very complicated. As an outsider, it looks very unorganized to you. But when I watch them play, I'm like, oh, no, this is what they want. And so people come into it like, isn't it confusing? His answer is that is no, not to this group of people. This group of people, this is what they want. They want a free for all. They want low quality. They want people trying different stuff. And they want their kind of YouTube stars to just be doing crazy things with the game, like breaking the game. And that's exactly opposite of what I think your let's use your SVP person as the straw man. Your SVP is not thinking that. They're thinking like, this is exactly what people don't want. And it's like, no, they have what they want.
I have two thoughts here. One, I like the direction you're going because what you're doing there is initially you have this get off my lawn sort of thing going on, but then you're like, hold on, let me see what actually brings joy to the people who work in this world, and I'm just gonna let flow like what that situation is and understand what it is they actually want, right? Like I like it, and not that you like it, but you can understand why that's a valid thing for them to experience. And I agree, like that. As listeners will remember, at one point I was trying to get Steam set up for my son to play Ark, and I feel like when Reagan opened up the lunatic asylums or the psychological resting homes or whatever in the 80s, all those people directly went to go work on Steam as the people who did UI stuff, and I don't know what's going on there. It's very complicated, but I think maybe what you're arriving at is that, and I don't mean this in a pejorative way, is that as a whole, the gaming industry abhors elegance, right? It doesn't like simplicity and elegance, except with a few exceptions, right? Like there are some categories of games, and I feel like this is the aesthetic of Apple Arcade. It's a very curated, elegant, almost like metaphorically Zen garden kind of gaming situation. And I don't know, the thing that makes me think of is like, this whole like you go to YouTube and you find your like chill vibes like study videos. I feel
Right.
like that is in the same sort of hemisphere as Apple Arcade. But as you're saying, I don't think that's what the gamers are that's not what people
Well, I
want.
think certainly, I guess, and that's the biggest thing. That's always commenting. Like we're getting into the old man yells at cloud, which maybe there, but it's sort of like it's more like to me, it's an acknowledgement of like, no, I now get it. Like, and I do think I'm talking mostly about preteens and teenagers, but like I think kind of the unorganized free for all is the feature, right? And I think as an outsider, until you really watch people start and really become one with that, you're never going to solve gaming. And it's like, because most of this generation has access to that. Like if you want a curated experience, you have Apple Arcade, the Nintendo Switch, most of the consoles, right? You could just play those games. Like if that's really what they wanted. But I think when I watch this group interact, it's like, no, they want to be in like Roblox and Epic and like doing crazy stuff, right? They want to be like playing tag inside a virtual world that has nothing, kind of like only loosely is affiliated with the game. Now you can't do that in Nintendo because Nintendo's like there's an achievement and you're going to do this, or like maybe you could do it in like Splatoon, right? Which is like, yeah, but you're kind of limited about what you can do there. So I think that's the whole thing. Right. So I think as I watch it, and I think the people running these companies are closer to my age than they are the gamers. It's like that's what I just think is the mistake they keep making. It's like, no. the chaos and anarchy is the feature that people want, and your subscription service is never going to bring that.
So okay, this brings the second thing that I was thinking, which is, I think, recalling back when I did strategy, in M&A stuff, and subsequent times of doing it, there's this you're with all the C-suite people, the SVPs, whatever, and there's this point in the strategic, especially the acquisition sort of journey you go through, where you're like, let's just put it on one slide, right? like we can't do a 4-up, we can't cheat by putting 4 slides on one slide, but we got to just put this all on one slide, right? It's got to be, I have to be able to show just one slide to people. And that may work for certain types of strategies and acquisitions you want to do, but I think we've just laid out that when it comes to figuring out strategy in the gaming industry, you cannot just put it on one slide, right? It's a much more complicated, there's a lot more things going on, a lot more variety. And if you are looking to enter this business and you're just the the medium often dictates the acquisition strategy, right? And that medium is that you want one slide, right? You want to have the elevator pitch. But I feel like getting into the gaming world, you can't do that, right? It's messy is a judgmental way of putting it, but I think another way of putting it is that there are so many different types of games and reasons that people use games and modes that they want to use it in, that to reduce it down to one slide is to oversimplify it, and your strategy is weakened. For example, as you were just saying, right? You were reminding me that you might have the chaos of all the Minecraft yellers and YouTube and all these other things, but then there's also the Switch, right? Which is a more curated sort of elegant thing. And I feel my son will easily go between the Switch and Minecraft yellers. They're in the same realm for him. And there's something, both of those are equally attractive to them. And he can have the chaos of YouTube and other things as a perfectly valid thing on his plate, right next to what's the name of the guy that you're paying your mortgage back to in Country Crossing? Both of these worlds are perfectly fine for him, but it would be impossible to fit those on the same slide. And I think maybe that is why, if you're not in the gaming world, it's very difficult for you to kind of drum up a strategy around them. Because like you said, you're always I haven't been in this world very much, but you know what this world needs is more simplification. What if we just had the
and maybe we can tie it off here. It's just to say, and I think the reason that in the executive pitches that this kind of gets compared a lot is that people are using movies, film, and TV as this analogy, right? It's hey, just like we did this from movies and TV, we can do the same thing from gaming. And I think, certainly with Netflix, Apple winning the Oscar this past weekend, and I think it has now been shown, you can, right? You can basically, if you have enough money, go out, make original content. There's really a well-known way to do it. Some of it will be good, some of it will be bad. You can build that into a curated experience inside your app. There'll be some competitors, but at the end of the day, people are just looking for things that entertain them, quality programming. And it is something that I think they have successfully taken from movies, something that was only in the movie theater. You can definitely get similar quality, if and again, using the Oscars as a reference, even quote unquote, the best movie of the year in quotations, right? An Apple can do that, and Netflix can do that. And I think they keep going back to the analogy. It's gaming's just like that. And it's that's my biggest takeaway is gaming has very little to do with film, and it's not really the same problem. And the more that you're comparing them on your one slide, Coté, the more you're just making a mistake.
Yeah. Beware the one slide strategy poison. You gotta watch out for that. Now, speaking of one slide, I don't think this is strategy poisoning, but it looks like the turnaround for Docker Inc. might be working now. This is based on them getting a round of funding and it looks like a $2 billion valuation. Now, as I think we have covered extensively over the years, a valuation before you actually transact on either an IPO or a sale of a company is largely meaningless, right? It could just be whatever, right? It's just some shit on paper. But that's fine. Still, I think, and it's not that I pay that close of attention to this stuff, but I mean, tell me your perspective, but I feel like, what seemed like a risky move in kind of splitting up Docker between the, I don't know, let's call it the server side Docker and
And
the
the dev
laptop
tools. Yeah.
Docker.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah. Dev
Like,
tools.
like it seemed a little bit like, I don't know what's going on here. But like, I feel like maybe, I can't speak for what Morancis has been up to, but I feel like on the Docker Inc. side, I don't know, seems to be going okay.
Well, yeah. Well, think back. I mean, I think, well, one thing the valuation is a proxy for is like you can debate what it's worth, but they clearly have some real revenue if they're getting to this level, right? So,
That's
like,
true. That's true.
and I think there was kind of like at one point it was like $100 million was thrown around or something like that. And then I think, it wasn't that long ago when they made this switch, right? They announced that you'd have to pay for Docker Desktop. I think it was like
Yeah.
over in certain parameters. And I don't know. I remember being very skeptical of that. I can't remember how we all weighed in.
Can I, I'm interrupting you, but can I tell you one of my favorite stories about Docker Desktop? Because it really ties together a lot of my commentary about software. So my teammate, great guy, Josh Long, he had this, I think he posted this in our Slack channel. He was like, whenever Josh talks, you need to pay attention because he doesn't talk very much.
Right. So it's for everyone. He's sort of like the demo god of Spring, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Go
He's
on.
phenomenal. And he had this long. Every now and then he shows up in our Slack channel and fills several pages of just stuff with commentary, which it's always priceless. And he said, I had been spending hours and days trying to like figure out getting Docker Desktop set up and doing this and the registries. And then I realized maybe I should just pay for it. And then all my problems went away. And it's like, yes, that is right. If you pay for software, your problems go away. That is what we are all trying to achieve. So go on.
No, well, listen, I mean, I think maybe that story encapsulates, a lot of people came to the same conclusion. Either it was easier to pay for because it provided some obvious value to, like, in the case of Josh's experience, or maybe someone from the legal team just, kind of got the invoice sent over. It's like, hey, it turns out you got to start paying for this and you got to accept this license, and people are just, okay with it. So I think it's an impressive turnaround. I mean, I don't know. I was trying to think of another example of like a software company that's sort of like broken itself up like this and like kind of reemerged, kind of in the same general area without like, completely like Nokia was like, selling rubber shoes or something and it became a phone company, some kind of story like that. But like, I don't know, it is impressive. So we'll have to see. I mean, and I think maybe it's the power of the brand here, right? It's just like, to Josh's question, right? Like if Josh, super smart, right? And I'm sure he knows, all of the solutions that he could use. The fact that he ultimately was like, instead of, hey, Docker Desktop is now paid, I'm going to move and do something different and it's going to be better. The fact that we'll use him as just the kind of the straw man is like the fact that he's sort of like, it's easier just to pay, just tells you it's like, hey, when you get the brand strong enough and you get enough people, it sounds like you can turn on the cash flow, at least for now, at least for the moment. So, good for Docker.
Yeah. So I agree. It's good to see they're doing well. And as I also like, I'm always interested, not always, but one of the other side notes is the former VP of marketing and product, Scott Johnson, is now the CEO of Docker. He went over there to be the VP. And I remember, back long ago in the late 2000s, I talked with him a lot because of course I covered Puppet and Chef and all those other people. So that's, I like to see, I mean, having worked in marketing for many years, when one of my marketing friends becomes the CEO, I think that's a win for all of us.
Danny, don't you have, is it Donnie, former Red Monk colleague?
I think, does he still work there?
At one point he was the VP of products.
I was about to give him,
I was going to say, well, maybe he moved on. So I was about to say, well, hey man, maybe he's sort of cracking the code. And if it's not him, I apologize. Then we'll just give it to the new credit to the new.
I know. It's dangerous because if we got this wrong, Donnie's the kind of guy who will never let us forget that.
That's fine. We'll just tag us in the podcast. Tag the podcast every time. That'd be great when you're criticizing us. Just get us some publicity.
I miss that guy. It'd be fun to run into him again. He's fun to hang out with. He's a good guy. All right. Well, I think good job for the Docker people. One slide strategy in the gaming industry, very difficult. And, I think maybe at some point, Brandon, what we should do is we need to revisit the best slide of, was it 2012, 2018. I forget when it was, but we've got to revisit that slide of what what Docker's ultimate goal for world domination was, and see if they realized it or not.
All right. Love it. We'll definitely do that. We have to go back because we did a whole, like, for the hardcore fans, there's a whole exegesis episode that I think it's in the feed now, where we broke down Docker when the former SAP person, I think, took over. And
I thought it was it SAP
somebody else?
or was it the
It was like their big time CEO came in.
Yeah.
And we did a whole episode about our prediction. I have to go listen myself to see if I feel like we came out pretty good on that one, but
oh yeah, that was a great slide.
I think we'd have to go back and listen.
Talk about a one slide strategy.
That's right.
That was it right there.
That was back when they were going to be that $40 billion company. So, All right. Well, hey, listen, everybody, as Coté was mentioned before, everyone needs to secure themselves. No better way to secure yourself than our friends at Strong DM. Go sign up for the 14-day trial, and you'll be more secure. Trust me. All right, Coté. We got it. All right, got all the ad breaks in. Kind of a miracle. Not surprising. We always do. But okay.
Well, it may seem nerve wracking, but we are professionals.
We did what? Gaming, Docker. We are. I guess we are professionals. We have to claim that one way or the other. And then, yeah. All right. And
sounds good.
What did I just put at? Oh, Strong DM, man. Okay. All right. We can wrap up whenever you're ready.
Well, do we have any bureaucracy this episode, Brandon?
We do. We have a bunch of things. So first, I wanted to thank David. He wrote in, and so I sent him a new laptop sticker. And then Ken from the Netherlands, Coté, so this is up your alley. He says he likes your idea of putting the software-defined talk sticker on the bike. So he's going to do that. So what I told him was, okay, well, if you take the wrong bike, but it has a sticker on it, it's Coté's. So that's it. So that's there's
right,
exactly.
There's probably only two of us in the whole country.
It. So Ken knows. And also Ken wanted to quote voice support for the Kensington Export Mouse Trackball. I've been using them for more than a decade. I own two, one in my office at home and one in my office in Amsterdam. I do realize that I may own the entire install base of the Netherlands. So for people who are wondering, we now can calculate the full total addressable market for trackballs. It's Matt Ray, two.
Four.
I think Matt Ray has two in Amsterdam. We know Ken has two in the Netherlands. And I think I got one other email. So I'm now going to say it's about five. That is the entire total addressable market of these trackballs. I even looked it up, and I was like, wow, I can't believe Matt and Ken are using these. But hey, to each their own. Maybe Matt and Ken need to get on and do a whole episode. Like, why can't they use the touchpad? Like, if you're not a mouse person, wouldn't you just use the trackpad? I don't know. So I hope Ken and Matt can do a 3-hour epised on that.
I feel like we have talked about trackballs so much. I might need to get one. Just to kind of see what
I'm not getting one. You check in. Because every time I see the trackball now, this is a long time recommendation. I've been watching Severance on Apple TV. Absolutely love it. I'm all in. But anyway, there's a little scene where they're using trackballs, and it always reminds me of Matt and now Ken. That's what I think of. A few other quick hits here. Jordy, good friend Jordy, he wants you to work at Harness. Ryan wants you to become the chief of staff for the CISO at Datadog. Coté, I was thinking about when I wrote this in today, I was like, man, I would never hire Coté as a chief of staff. I don't know. Just when I was putting it in there, I was like, that job, and nor would I hire myself, but I was like, man, I would never hire Coté as a chief of staff.
No.
So that was the immediate reaction I had. But don't worry, that doesn't mean Coté is a bad person. It's just not the right job for him. So you can go in the jobs channel and you can find other jobs.
No, I was talking with a coworker recently, and what we realized is that, like, yes, I would be a terrible chief of staff, but I would be a great sort of manager executive if I did have a chief of staff.
I was thinking the same thing. I was thinking you would be like a good chief. Maybe you are a chief, but I was like, yeah, you would be good. You just got to know your role there. And then finally here, I just want to say, Andrew wants you to work at Deep Factor. And if you do join there, they were talking in the chat, you will be known as a Deep Factorium, if I'm saying that right. So that's the name of their employee. So it's kind of hard to say.
Let me see.
It's like Deep
Factorium. Because it ends in an NM.
Yeah, it's almost like it's kind of like factorial as like a noun. So I don't know. I've never seen anything like that. So yeah. So it seems like a good place though. I don't know. It seems like they're doing stuff. So if you want to know anything about these jobs or other jobs, you should just join the SDT Slack, join the jobs channel. All of these jobs are posted in there where you can ask questions about them. You can ask questions about being, how to pronounce that word, about being a factorium employee. So check all that out. And then finally, as I mentioned before, if you want a sticker, just send me your postal address to stickers@softwaredefinedtalk.com, and I will be happy to send you a sticker anywhere in the world.
Well, there's several conferences to go over. Brandon's mentioned it, but if you want to see all of them, you can go to softwaredefinedtalk.com/351. Now, today we wrapped up our .NET Beyond conference. I had the great pleasure of. It was a fun. You might want to check out this format, Brandon. But it was a good format where it was kind of like discussion presentation hybrid talks. So I had a whole talk where there was a few slides with Stacy, and they went over. There were a few things there, but it was get this. Just hold on to your pants here. Okay. It was a discussion about modernizing a Silverlight application for a Netherlands company.
Okay.
And it was just like, it was exquisite. There was another talk about a guy, Lewis, hacking into Kubernetes, basically. But it was a fun conference. Now you can see the recordings of it if you go to the show notes. Well, actually not, because Brandon deleted it just now. But just look up .NET Beyond Conference and
which is in the show notes. It's in there. It's back now. And I'm actually gonna hey, Silverlight. That's kind of like that's my legacy conf information, right? Those are the times of stuff I'm interested in learning about. So I will look that up.
Both of those talks had a lot of interesting insights. I really enjoyed them. Now, also there is that conference over there in Round Rock, which is to say Austin. At May 23rd and 26th. Sadly, I won't be there. We got
Brandon
a bunch of
JJ will be there doing something. We don't know what, but it's going to be great.
It'll be a software-defined talk moment. Maybe that's what we should start calling it. But also, there's several DevOps days in Birmingham, Chicago. I'll be at the Austin one, May 4th and 5th. And we also have a spring tour coming up where I will be April 26th and 27th. And there's some other conferences like Mongos and Splunks and things like that. And then finally, December 6th to 8th is going to be our Spring One platform. Now, I have a request for the listeners, and that is, once again this year, we're having our second DevOps Loop conference here at VMware, and it's it's going to be two parts. The first part will be online, as it was last year, and then get this, Brandon. This is you'll enjoy this at VMworld. We are going to have a theCUBE style video setup where I'm going to interview people for the DevOps Loop sort of interview thing. So I have two asks for our audience. One of the first one is more urgent. If there are people in the DevOps and also the application development world that you think would be great to speak at this conference, I'd like to know about them, because we're rounding up some speakers. And the theme that we've put in place this year is, as I like to think of it, putting the dev back in DevOps, right? So I want to have some discussions of, like, if you're an application developer, what's going on in your mind when it comes to DevOps, right? So let's talk a lot more about like application programming than the usual. I shouldn't say usual. I'm being kind of dismissive there, but let's weigh more on the dev side. So I don't know if you have some ideas there, that would be interesting. And then also I'll want to be interviewing some people at VMworld for our DevOps Loop video thing, which would also be good to hear. Now with that, Brandon, what do you have to recommend this episode?
All right. Well, back to some discussion about regulation and legal systems. So today I'm going to recommend basically the small app developer assistance.com. And so turns out that if you were an iOS app developer between certain periods of time and you actually put an app in the App Store, you can potentially get part of the payout. And depending at a minimum, you can get $250. But if you sold more, depending on how much you sold, then you can, and then I guess your app needed to be in there between 2015 and 2021. So, Coté, as you know, I put an app out there during that period of time, and I actually got a phone call from someone. And of course, you never answer your phone, right? No one answers their phone. And I got a voicemail. So normally this came across to me as like, I was like, this must be some form of scam or something like this. But the way that the person left the message was so indifferent. They're just like, I'm calling you to let you know that you may be eligible for this. Like, they just don't even care, right? The fact that they were just so indifferent made me be like, that's interesting that this person called because they don't really seem to care at all. So I looked it up. Everything looks legit. You can go through. If you had an app between that period of time, it's fairly easy. You fill out a web form. And then in June, if the judge accepts our terms, because now I'm part of the entire developer community, then we're all going to get some payouts. And they'll even pay you via like Venmo and stuff. So I'm interested now that I'm part of this giant class action lawsuit, will I get my money from Apple? And of course, what's even funnier about the whole thing is I actually thought the App Store was like a miracle. The fact that you could build an app and like put it out there and like, people could buy it and you would somehow get money. Even to this day, I know people are like all upset with the Apple splits, but I'm just like, wow, I think it's incredible that it even existed and that I made a tiny bit of money and got to like kind of scratch an itch of building an app. So really, thank you to Apple for building the App Store. And then thank you to whoever's running this lawsuit. I hope I get my $250, which will probably equal all the sales I've ever made from it. So it's a great investment of my time.
You're going to double your revenue.
Probably. I have to like invent a whole new line item on the financial statement to show where that income is coming from. So it'd be great.
Now, in the words of the dude, you might have to talk to your accountant about this increase. You might be going up a tax bracket.
Well, that's great for everyone that has like a side hustle that's not doing well. There's nothing more. It's kind of like your annual MBR, annual business review, when you have to kind of disclose this to your accountant. They're like, "What is this?" And you're like, "Well, I was doing this thing." And they're like, "What?" And that's all you sold. You're like, yeah, can we just put it on there? There's a line on the tax form for that, but it's always a brutal moment. So yeah, sorry, I'll work harder next year, Mr. Accountant.
All right. Well, I have a recommendation that is more of a technique. So now listen, as you're doing, long-term listeners know my position on family pets. So I'm not going to reprise that. But through a series of delightful events, we now in our house have 2 snakes. That my son has, and one of the snakes was a hognose snake, which Kim, my wife, she feels uncomfortable about the hognose snake because she is right. It kind of looks like a rattlesnake, not exactly, but it has it throws off some of those vibes. Now the hognose snake, what you do with juvenile or baby snakes is you feed them basically baby mice. Pinkies, as they call them, which, whatever, you already own snakes, so you're just sort of like circle of life and through this whole situation. But the hognose, no problem, it'll eat a snake. But we got this other snake called I shouldn't say we, my son and my wife have this other snake called the African house snake, and it's very small and very young, and it was not eating for a while. And then my wife Kim looked up how you should feed this, and what you do is you take some tweezers, and you take the defrosted pinky mouse, because you buy them frozen and then you got to defrost them. First, you defrost them in some warm water so they kind of warm up. And then you've got to take some tweezers and basically do this like theatrical thing where you're holding the mouse in front of the snake's head and you're bouncing it around as if it were alive. And then I didn't think this would work after all their attempts, but I don't know what my son calls the African house snake, but it basically just bit onto that mouse. And then you kind of like shove the mouse into its mouth until it feels like it has it all the way, and then the mouse starts eating. So I think that technique, I've also heard techniques that you want to like puncture the head so some of the brain juice comes out so they eat it. You can also cut it into 3 parts, the mouse, so that it'll eat it that way. But I start with if you have a snake that's not eating, start with the technique of warming it up in some hot water and then holding it with some tweezers and waving it around in front of it. Now, I don't even like having to feed the fucking dog. And next thing you know, I'm having to do this whole thing to feed a goddamn snake. And, it is, I just feel like I've already got like, including myself, like 5 living things in the house that we have to work on feeding. And now this is what I'm doing. I'm figuring out how to feed like a just born mouse to a snake that is reluctant to eat it. Whereas like I would just enjoy getting any sort of smoked meat. If you put that in front of me, you don't have to have it in tweezers and wave it in front of me. I'll eat it. And this snake, I don't know what its problem is. Anyhow, obviously you don't have any problems because you've listened to this entire episode and you know how to live your life correctly. This has been Software Defined Talk. If you want to get the show notes for this episode, you can go to softwaredefinedtalk.com/351. You can also join our Slack channel. We have lots of delightful conversations about things we'll talk about. I don't know, other stuff going on there. It's fun to join if you go to softwaredefinedtalk.com. And with that, we'll see everyone next time. Bye bye.
Man, I don't know what to say about that recommendation, Coté. That's brutal. That's brutal. Well, hey, listen, thanks to everyone in the chat. We had a good crew today. Really appreciate everyone listening. And no, Matt is okay. Just Matt is in the final phase of the time change. So next week,
The
I
final
believe,
phase.
I
Time
believe
is a circle.
it is. I believe Australia falls back. I don't know, springs back. I don't know how they say it down there, but he'll go back an hour, and then I think we'll all be like on a good schedule again. At least I hope that's what's going to happen. At least for six more months.
He's gonna emerge from his chrysalis like the caterpillar in Alice in Wonderland. I think is what happens, right?
Yeah. So until the next week, thanks for everyone listening, and we'll talk to you hopefully this time next week.
Yeah. Bye bye.